触りなんだてめえ。俺と似たような髪の色しやがってパチモン野郎。
Right, that was it. That was exactly what he said back then. Even then, he practically spewed the words like they were vomit, yet now he injected them with even more of his pent-up malice.
おかげでいい迷惑だ。はあ、そうだな。ずっと迷惑ばかりだった。あの時はあっさり蹴りがつくと思ってたから違ったけどよ。本当に邪魔くせえやつだよ、てめえの存在はな。
He had always been a thorn in his side. Their similarities only made things worse. The damn rabbit mouth robbed Wilhelm of the glory under Lord Heinrich's throne that should have been rightfully his. He was a freak of fucking nature that should have dropped that night. I'll bet though, ain't Harrier. Who are they kidding? The piece of shit was hardly worthy the title of a worm. And the least forgivable of all was that the fucker had the audacity to claim the goal of Wilhelm's mud and zeal as his own. Wilhelm had to admire himself for managing to contain his fury for this long. The ashen bastard was even partly responsible for the curse shackling his being. The bloodlust emanating from the policeman made a trigger to go off in Schreiber's mind. He was, after all, an unparalleled combatant who sacrificed even his own sanity to attain greater prowess in battle. Broken from the get-go, there was no way he'd miss an opportunity of potential carnage, no matter how maddened of a state he was in.
ああ、なんだ、そうだったんだ。お兄さん、僕のファンだったわけなんだ。だから僕の名前も知ってたんだね。そうでしょ。そうだよね。そうなんだろ。僕が欲しくて仕方なかったんだよね。
The instrument of wholesale carnage had awakened from its slumber with a creak. Love or hatred, it made little difference. He would simply ravage and devour all that his one-eyed gaze fell upon. His left eye was a whirlpool of a whole petrol of twisted emotions, ranging from manic obsession through boundless passion to zealous love. Meanwhile, the gaping cavity of his right ushered in a raging tempest, filling the square with the stench of decay.
いいな、いいよお兄さん。乗れる感じだ。名前が知りたい。これから先も今夜の興奮をたまに思い出して浸りたいよ。だからねえいいでしょ、名前教えて知りたいんだ。
ああ、いいぜ、教えてやるよ。
Wilhelm's heart danced with elation upon realizing that he managed to recreate all that happened that night. His blood began congealing into deadly torrents. It was a good night. The time was finally nigh. As far as he was concerned, they were no longer on that case pool of an eastern island. This was an undeniable continuation of that day upon the nostalgic streets of Berlin that served as the beginning of it all.
清掃13騎士団黒煙岳第4位ベルヘルム・エーレンブルグ風イクルベイ
And as he now had a name to declare.
さあ名乗りな。てめえはなんだ、何者だ。大事なとこだぜ。言ってみろよなあ、シュライバ
ー。Remember who you are and who I am. What did we struggle to attain? What did we admire? What did we pride ourselves over? What was the glory to be shredded to pieces for?
僕？ああ、そうだね。僕はそうだ、僕はそうだよ。
In the moment his consciousness was about to lapse back in the past, abandoning all rational thought. He witnessed the murky restless of his broken memories that carried away more glory than anything else he knew.
清掃13騎士団黒煙卓第12位大隊長ウォルフガング・シュライバーフローズ・ビトニル。
That was his name.
すべてにおいて誰より早く 何よりもハイドリヒ教に忠誠を誓ったあの人のアルベド、一番最初の獣の牙だ。
夢見てんじゃねえぞ。そりゃ俺のことなんだよ。
As he uttered the words that meant the absolute and undeniable truth, to him countless thorns emerged, piercing the darkness of the night sky. And that's the moment we move somewhere else. A tremble shook the air without warning as a humongous earthquake upheaved the ground, causing all roses in the garden to hum in unison. An intermittent chain reaction of tremors. The phenomenon felt almost like a giant had grabbed hold of the garden, fervently flinging it in all directions.
かすみ、エリー、立ってるなよ。すっ転ぶぞ。伏せとけ。
Clinging to the ground with nothing but sheer tenacity, Shiro did his best to survey the mess around him. His instincts told him that this phenomenon had shook the whole of the netherworld. Thought inexplicable held for him a rare opportunity. Wilhelm had most likely started a battle just now, and against a foe so powerful it made his insides tremble. Naturally, Shiro had no idea who it could have been. He could easily imagine that bastard falling out with his comrades and killing them, but Shiro had no recollection of anyone that could have caused the Ivory Demon to experience such a fierce sense of elation. He had a few run-ins with the Psychos before, but Wilhelm came off as by far the most savage of them all. It didn't feel like any others would compare to him in a straight fight either. Well, maybe Ren, if he powered up enough. Yet their ringing roses conveyed the ecstasy of their master. It was so strong that even they, despite being foreign bodies within the demon's gestalt, felt its effect drilling into their brains.
ってことは新手か。
Shiro had to assume Wilhelm was fighting someone from the obsidian table day that he had yet to learn about. That was why the aftershocks of battle reverberated all the way to his very core. In the worst case scenario, he might end up sharing Wilhelm's fate if the vampire lost the fight. There was nothing else he could do other than squeeze his fists and indignantly glare at nothingness.
あらやだ、また地震かしら。
Her invariably bright voice stood out in the distressful situation like a sore thumb.
なあ、ここって今みたいによく揺れるのか？
Shiro took to casual conversation in an attempt to kindly pry information out of the girl.
そうなの、最近よく起こるようになっちゃって、ほんと困ってるのよ。
結構前にも多かったとか？
ええ、一時期はいつもこんな感じ。
In the middle of World War II, when the whirlwind of war swept across the world, forcing him to rely on his powers on a daily basis just to survive, the woman's words confirmed that Wilhelm was currently in the midst of a battle. As such, he could not waste this perfect opportunity for a prank. Surprises and intrusions were at the core of any fight, and it would be bad for all of them if the bastard happened to kick the bucket. If he was gonna bow out, at least he should do it after relinquishing his powers to Shiro.
そういや俺、毎度あいつにちょっかいかけてんな。
True. He had more run-ins with Wilhelm than any other members of the obsidian table. He troubled him the most, and even ended up killing him. Well, it was him, his own damn fault for being an omnivore bastard that devoured anything and everything. It was about time to let him know that he had just ingested a poisonous mushroom.
ああ、悪く思うなよ、注意殿。あんたにもいろいろあるように、俺にもどうにかしないといけない事情があるんだよ。
It was time for Shiro to join the fight. He should at least be able to stir things up a bit. After all, hitting unsuspecting foes from behind was his specialty. He started towards his goal with a brisk smile.
シロ、危ないよ。収まるまで伏せてなきゃ。
お前じゃねえんだ。転ぶかよ。あと、悪いなエリー。一足お先だ。
はあ？ちょっと、あんたまさか。
Having said everything he wanted, Shiro reached to the fountain without listening to the girl's response. The woman before him enjoyed even the tremors with a blissful smile on her lips. Standing under the spraying fountain, she paid no attention to the man approaching her. However,
お宅のお子さん、いじめられてるよ。
he whispered it in a voice so faint it reached only her ears.
今、なんて言ったの？
The effect was both immediate and colossal. Shiro's voice, like that of Mephisto, delivered a blow to the mind of a mother. Oh boy! And the battle outside had already evolved into a one-sided slaughter.
そうか。
Now this is getting freaking interesting, probably. His body flew into the air in response to the clash. His arms were torn out, with only the white of his bones visible. He launched a volley of thorns the moment they passed each other. He made sure to use as many as possible to make evasion impossible, yet all they pierced was the night sky, unable to catch up to their target. Their battle was a constant repeat of this outcome, even though the number of his attacks had already soared past 3 digits. Wilhelm had yet to hit Schreiber a single time. Before he could land on solid ground, the mother Tempest would assault him, propelling him back up into the air. Wilhelm danced in the air like a leaf blown through the wind. No, it was even worse than that. His attacks came at an ungodly velocity, exceeding the very speed of sound. Losing his hearing, albeit unintentionally, proved to be the worst thing to happen to Wilhelm. A gust of wind whizzed past his ear, the roar of clashing bodies following long after the attack. The sound of the first punch would reach Wilhelm's ears only after he had already been hit a dozen times. The air having lost its function as a conductor deprived its wielder not only of sanity but also speech, this worked in Schreiber's favor. The onslaught would not let up. At this stage, his mind had retreated to another dimension, forgetting all about his pistols or craving to avoid being touched. Where is he? Okay, I've got one thing. And the second thing. Anywho. And yeah, Schreiber had no technique while on a rampage. He merely kept lunging at his foes in straight lines like a crazed boar. He punched and kicked the enemy with all his strength, tearing him apart. He gnawed with his jaws like a wild beast. He cast aside all the supernatural techniques of murder he had mastered over the years, turning their bout into a primordial scuffle of savagery, a clash of ferocities straight out of myths and legends. He bolted through the battlefield, retaining only his greatest armor, the doctrine of superlative speed. Faster than his foes, faster than anyone, faster, so no one could ever touch him. Such was his only wish, his sole craving given form. No one could capture him, for that was indeed all he wished for during the course of his life. Don't touch me, lowlifes, keep your filth away, away, don't come any closer, don't touch me. Make this giant whirlwind blast all the deplorable rubble away. That was his one and only desire. He wished for nothing else. He forfeited both his sanity and senses. He would sacrifice anything to attain speed, outstripping all physical matter. As such, it was an obvious consequence that his prayer would not account for his own flesh. The two met in a violent collision of blood and flesh. Wilhelm lost his whole shoulder, while Schreiber's arm, which he used for the attack, exploded from the tip of its fingers down to the elbow. The two regenerated in an instant and shifted back to the offensive. Countless Thorns assailed the fleeing Schreiber, who evaded them all before launching a counterattack of his own. His limbs exploded again. He had been discarding body parts like a lizard with his tail. The raging whirlwind, continuing its never-ending process of destruction and regeneration, grew in ferocity, gradually evolving into an all-devouring tornado. Perhaps one could label it a form of cathartic purification? He could not kill without touching another, yet if he did, he would be tainted. He was the physical embodiment of antimony. He hated filth, he wished not to be soiled. As such, he would eradicate it all. But how? How could he rain down death upon all beings without ever being touched? The answer were awaiting him beyond that childish contradiction turned out to be joint annihilation. Fearing another's touch, Case took hold meaning if they were both eradicated. He would be decimated, then reborn, and continue his slaughter for all eternity. Limbs that had been soiled were no longer of use to him, and would be discarded in favor of new, pure ones. In Schreiber's mind, clothed by mud and fury and zeal, even such logic would hold water. The 180,000 victims, currently surging through the socket of his right eye, to be used as fuel stood testament to that claim. He was indeed the most voracious knight of the obsidian table. And that was also precisely the craving so desperately coveted by the one being mercilessly upbraided at a steady pace. To what extent would the bastard have to hijack his things to be satisfied? Wilhelm's unfettered vehemence merged with the bloodlust showering upon his being from above, resulting in a roaring explosion of emotion. The thorns of palpable death, incessantly ravaging the very space they occupied, manifested around them like a barrier, dwarfing the voice of Gatling guns. Each and every one of them was soaked deep in Valis. The prison of stakes, the forest of thorns that consumed the very concept of offering would allow no foreign body to escape their grasp. Wilhelm erased the space of evasion itself. There were no gaps in the net of death to squeeze through, even for someone of Schreiber's tender frame. Wilhelm, who persisted through sheer obsession and willpower, finally launched an attack that enmeshed the Ashen Knight. But that ephemeral road to victory that flickered before his eyes was extinguished like a candle's flame by a screech of a beast. An impact, Wilhelm let out a scream of astonishment at the savagery of his foe, a foolish shark no sane mind could ever entertain. The very demon contorted his clear-cut features at the debacle unfolding before him. A voice, a shower of stakes rained down upon them in response to a roar befitting an overlord of beasts. Air would turn to a physical wall once one penetrated the barrier of sound. For Schreiber, who had long since transcended its shackles, it felt more like a thunderous hammer. He added to them the vigor of his soul, which created a space for him to escape. He, in his ultimate state of fusion, had become akin to a sentient Achternerbe. The entire of his being, his voice, the spark in his eyes, the very air he breathed, had been soaked in vile thaumaturgy. After all, the whole of a wolf had since ancient times worked to repel evil spirits, actually. And while they both were beings of the preternatural, it only stood reason that the greater calamity would inevitably subsume the lesser. It was the fate of the inferior to be eroded. Its merciless counter pierced the only air. The attack that contained all of Wilhelm's being failed to graze even a single lock of Schreiber's hair. He was like a square timber being crushed in a grinder, as something swallowed by the violent surging waves. Am I the only one that is still interested in what his mother is going to do, and don't really care about the fight? Little by little, slowly, yet most certainly, The incessant erosion of one's body at an ungodly speed, well, maybe a bit interesting to find as well, but like that moment the mother heard the words from Shira, I'm freaking interested really much what's going to happen there. Wilhelm's regeneration couldn't keep up. He was being shredded alive, his fingers were torn off, his bones broken, his stomach punctured, and his intestines crushed. He could see nothing through the muddy veil of his vision, and considering how sound had lost his keys to function, each of his attacks failed to reach the target. His body was slowly being mercilessly annihilated, obliterated and crushed while a mixture of flesh, blood and bone sprayed through the air like a fountain. He reformed his body again. His attack missed once again, earning him a supersonic kick to the stomach. The blow sent him flying into the air. His body propelled like a bullet, crushed the tower's wall, making the colossal structure weir. His frame was broken like a piece of junk, with blood trickling to his eyes in thick rivulets. His vision turned crimson. Wilhelm, observing the world he was used to and sought after, twisted his lips into a smile. He could predict this outcome from the start. No one could catch up to Schreiber. The rabid beast had been gifted by the boon of absolute speed. No one could touch it. Both his foes and Alice acknowledged that it was an irrevocable actuality. No one, save for Lord Hedrich, could subdue him once he had entered his berserk state. Well, Mercurius also, I guess. The thorns of the forest were not good enough. Wilhelm Ehrenburg would never catch up to Schreiber. Was that a fact or an incorrigible misconception? Everyone believed it to be truth, except for Wilhelm himself. A colossal rumble followed by a fresh impact into his broken frame. The attack that pierced his stomach had practically nailed him to the wall. The onslaught of stakes could not even provide a means to buy time. If anything, they would have only helped Schreiber gain more speed. In the next one, the bloodlust reached critical mass, its explosion finally putting a halt to the seemingly endless barrage. The very air trembled from such an awesome display of killing intent, sending the crackled walls to helplessly crumble to dust. His roar of unbridled fury shook the night air in his wake. For the first time during their fight, Schreiber faltered. His beastly instincts urged him to stop. For what there came to pass till now was but a curtain raiser. Wilhelm landed on the ground and took a step forward with a curse on his lips. His tranquil tone was but the silence before the storm. Well, he can do that actually, that's true, without touching him. He would crush and obliterate all in that round that dared make such a laughable misconception. He would make them pay. No one would escape. All in order to spread this word of eternal night across the world as its absolute rule. The air began to twist and warp. The world cracked, its fissures running along space like spilled obsidian ink. A realm from another domain penetrated the common cosmos. The same way Schreiber manifested his creed of absolute speed, so did Wilhelm nurture an earnest craving in his shriveled heart. Near palpable murders that seeped through the fingers of reality. The air was pregnant with... no, its blood dust rained down from the sky like a torrent. And that was not the only change that occurred to him. his inner world changed as well. It was now the verge of violent transformation brought about by an existence he once devoured.
何って？俺は別に何も。ただちょいとオタクのお子さんがどうなってるか言っただけじゃないか。
取り消しなさい。違うわよ、ありえないわ。
そう言われてもな、事実だしよ。
Shiro gave a full shrug of his shoulders as Helga's depression twisted in a storm of abrupt fury. Her lips formed a hysterical scream, her bloodshot eyes opened wide, while her disordered hair danced wildly in the wind. She was truly the living embodiment of furious Gorgon. Her tranquil and amiable mannerism vanished without a trace. She denied Shiro's words, succumbing completely to her seething surge of emotions. And so Shiro granted her the finishing blow.
ま、俺としても何とかしてやりたいんだがね。あいにく力不足でどうしようもない。いじめられても助けに行ってやれないのさ。
A situation she simply could not acknowledge. Shiro imparted upon her the knowledge of her family being in peril.
なんで？ねえ、なんで？どうしてなの？あんないい子をどうしていじめるやつがいるの？
Yeah.
優しい子なのよ。愛しい子なのよ。悪いことなんてできない。大切な家族なのにどうして
What?
そりゃ世の中嫌なやつくらい腐るほどいるさ。中にはろくでなしもいて、大方そういうやつの仕業だろうさ。
How can he adapt to a situation? I don't know. Whatever. Only demon could match a demon. As such, Wilcomb's opponent was without a doubt. Rotten bastard just like him. In that sense, Shiro hadn't uttered a single lie. He merely gave Helga a little push, leading her thought process in a convenient direction. Not to the inside, but towards the outside world. Not the Rose Garden, but reality itself.
俺もお友達の危機には駆けつけたいんだがな。ちょいと力になれそうもない。
So wish for it. Wish for the circumstance that would make such a rescue possible. If you don't want to perish with him, relinquish your existence to me.
幼い私はまだあなたを知らなかった。一体私は誰なんだ。一体どうして私はあなたの元に来たのだろう。
The chant continues, his craving, the word he sought after slowly came to being.
で、いじめてる方だがよ。多分かなり危ないやつだぜ。人を殺すことを何とも思ってないような。殴ったら死んだとかふざけたこと抜かすタイプ。
She too was slowly awakening to the song in the rose garden. The fountain began to pulsate like a beating heart, spurting blood upon the roses, turning them an even vivid hue of crimson.
おお、怖いね。そんなやつに絡まれたらきついな、お子さん。ボッコボコにされて傷だらけで帰ってきたりしてな。
The stench of blood had already pretty much merged with the air. The festering aroma impregnated the sky, making the roses tremble.
まあそれならいいけど、下手したら人情沙汰になってたりとかな。危ないやつなんだ。ちょいと刺したり刺されたりぐらい若気の至りで発展してみたり。
さない。
Okay, unforgivable, right? His words were interrupted by a vehement curse. Helga wrapped her shaking hands around herself, mumbling the same words over and over again, her vacuous stare fixed on the ground. Unforgivable. She merely kept uttering that monotonous curse in a dry voice.
故に恋人に枯れ落ちろ。死骸を晒せ。
The rumbling night, the trembling darkness. A night even darker than the one before engulfed the world.
許さない。許さない。許さない。許さない。許さない。許さない。許さない。許さない。許さない。許さない。許さない。許さない。
The core of the Achnenerbe dwelling within the vampire's bowels answered. She loved Wilhelm and was loved back, As such, the bone of darkness that had taken the shape of his sister pierced the air with an unfettered shriek, to guide her beloved to victory once again.
許さない。よくも私のヴィルヘルムに手を挙げたな
The fury of the Gorgon mother answered the call of the demonic blood. The incantation manifested with unprecedented immaculateness.
ローゼンカバリエ・シュワルツバルド。
In that moment, the world was swallowed by an abyss. The night swallowed by the night. The night swallowed the night, resulting in impenetrable darkness. The air itself creaked, with all of creation wielding in its deadly embrace. The trees at the side of the road, the buildings, the cars, even the Schreiber himself. Not even the moonlight could penetrate its darkness. Paradise for two of Wilhelm's wildest dreams had descended upon the mortal realm.
あのガキしぶといどころか余計なことまでしやがったな。
The content of his words was that of a complaint, yet his tone brimmed with undiluted glee. A stubborn for anybody that resisted the digestion for this long. As he activated his creation figment, deploying his inner world to the outside realm, he also grew conscious of Shiro's existence. The brat's unbelievable tenacity prompted a mark of genuine admiration from the Ivory Demon.
ああ、いいぜ。楽しませてくれた礼だ。そこで見てな。ご褒美だ。受け取れガキ。年長者から施しだ。涙流して感激しろよな。
誰が
The voice that answered him was the usual crude timbre of a rascal. The soul of Olympian stalwartness, without a hint of exhaustion to blemish it. Had he been devoured by someone with a weaker will, he could have chosen to plunder the Achnerberg from the inside, thus reforming his own soul. Wilhelm gloated upon his splendid luck to have met a soul that continued to entertain him even after death. It was first, even for him.
よしよし、いい子にしてな。てめえは後だ。戦略があるんだよ。気分よく終わらせてからきっちり溶かしてやる。
Luck favored him today. Kneeling on the ground, he took a good look at his primary goal.
どうよ、聞くだろ、シュライバー。今夜のは特にいい感じなんだ。最高だろ、この夜は。永遠に座れる気分ってのはよ。どんな気分だよ。なあ、教えてくれねえか。そうだな、悪い悪い。狼どころか犬畜生じゃ人間様の言葉も喋れねえみてえだな。
Schreiber gave him a vicious look, but failed to mask the agony and surprise that momentarily overtook his expression. His specialty was to outspeed all of the world. In other words, he was an internal combustion engine of sorts, incessantly generating energy within, a weapon of mass carnage that, in its state of insanity, would continue its endless dash till all fools were completely obliterated. As such,
いつまでもどこまでも俺はてめえを吸い続けられるぜ、シュライバー。
Wilhelm would drain and absorb the very energy that made the rabid beast accelerate without limit, and use it to bolster his own darkness. The world had turned to a vampire. There was no need for the Ivory Demon to touch his foes, for his hegemony to catch them. Eleanor was not the only one who possessed an undodgeable attack. Indeed, Wilhelm was another who could match the Ashen Beast in battle.
皮肉だな。反則で手に入れたその力が結局自分の首を絞めてるわけだ。
And the two mad warriors competing for the seat of Albert were indeed alike. The stronger their opponents, the more they'd power themselves up. Wilhelm had never before synchronized with the boon of darkness raging within him to this extent. They now breathed as one. The night would last forever. The boarding sun would never grace his realm darkness. His paradise would expand till the whole of the cosmos was drained, dry and withered. Schreiber stood up with a growl. The whole of a wounded beast couldn't even compare to that of one merely prowling the wilds. The raw animosity emanating from his every pore was so condensed, its weight broke the pavement below his feet.
おー、いい感じだぜ、シュワイバー。そうだ、その目だよ。昔のまま変わらないそいつを俺はえぐってやりたくてな。
His eyes lit up in vivid crimson within the dark as they beheld the ashen beast's lone socket. A moment later, two whirlwinds invaded the tranquility of the night. Countless flashes of light clashed in the darkness. The fireworks illuminating the sky were caught by the feral gale and swirled in the whirlwind like stardust. It was the result of the demonic art of draining and absorbing a fool's vigor. Wilhelm, who had been nourished by the most exquisite of feats, could temporarily enter the realm of Schreiber's speed. Both of their screams transcended words. At this point, it was impossible to tell whether that was a shout of valor or the manifestation of their bloodlust. The sound itself was torn apart. The very air warped and distorted, unable to contain its form. Their battle had turned aerial. The speed with which they darted up the looming tower wall was so tremendous it shattered the yoke of gravity, accelerating further and further. A stake of ungodly speed pierced the sky. The fattened forest of death launched at the rabid beast with the intent to scour it. It was the fastest attack he had ever launched. The destructive prowess of the vampire had finally reached its apex. Yet the creation figment of the ultimate speed was still intact. Despite having its energy drained, it would still bolster Schreiber's speed, just enough to let him remain a step ahead of his foe. Ungodly or not, there was simply no way of outcompeting Schreiber's speed, for it ignored and ravaged all of his gallows of nature. Couldn't you just keep draining his energy? Wilhelm might have plundered the beast's incredible speed, yet it mattered little when its creation figment was to be faster. As such, they competed not in terms of speed but endurance. It was unlikely that the rabid beast's legion could break through the night of blood-stained roses, especially after it had been bolstered to absolute immutability by Helga's mad affection. As such, the battle would end with Schreiber running out of fuel, or Wilhelm falling before the fact. No other finale existed for the two. Both their bodies had been broken beyond repair, neither Schreiber being on the offensive nor Wilhelm battered by incessant attacks could afford defeat. Regenerate, decimate, over and over again. Wilhelm continued his hollow onslaught with a warped obsession. He didn't care that he had been deteriorating faster than he could regenerate.
たく、結局自利品じゃねえかよ。
Shiro let out a sigh, observing the garden's collapse. The flowers seemed to be losing their vivacity, and the vigor of the blood pouring from the fountain was a mere shadow of what it used to be just a short while ago. The only one who seemed unabated was Helga, who still kept shaking and mumbling curses under her breath. Kasumi and Ellie, overpowered by the vampiric pressure of the nether realm, couldn't even stand up.
頃合いだな。
Which meant the stage for Shiro was finally set.
よう、生きてるか、かすみ。
なんて、あんたはそんな元気なのよ。
健康有料児なんだよ。日頃の行いってやつだ。そんで、エリー、そっちはどうよ。いけそう。
どうだろう。こりゃちょっときついかな。
ほーらい。 じゃあ悪いがよ。俺は行かせてもらうわ。
まあ恨みっこはなしって約束だしね。
そういうこった。
二人とも何言って。
Shiro turned away from the two, ignoring the question. Well then, what words would be the ideal for their final conversation? Only one matter begged elucidation. An answer the question had postponed all this time.
悪いな、かすみ。お前の親父殺したの。
He uttered the words that Ren forbade him from saying that day. He cracked his neck as a befuddled whimper reached him from behind. An apoptosis, huh?
おい、聞こえてんだろ、真っ白吸血鬼。
He addressed the master of this world.
このままだと負けるぜ、お前。
No reaction, but he could feel the rose's pulse, either in anger or...
ありゃ体に染みつかせて学んでるからな。どんだけ精神がいっちまっても関係ねえよ。体で受けたもんが機能する。覚えられてるぜ。長い付き合いなんだろ。木をてらうとか柵をどうなのじゃ一生かかっても無理だ。あんたはもう知り抜かれてんのさ。命と根性で埋まる差でもないだろうよ。
That was the truth. Wilhelm and Schreiber knew everything about each other, including the fact that a day like this would come. Both could feel it in their bones. And without surprise attacks to rely on, Wilhelm fell one step behind Schreiber in pure brawling.
だからよ、使うもの全部使え。お前が持ってないものが野郎にとっての強調だ。
Something that was an alien to him. A ludicrous childish strategy. To that voice urging him to put his trust in the unknown. The master of the night could simply not afford to lend an ear. Wilhelm's arm flew in the air, ripped out alongside his entire shoulder. He instantly caught it in his other hand, preparing to reabsorb the flesh through his natural regeneration. But the maddened beast's attacks denied him even that. A sudden chance at victory. Schreiber, realizing that now was the time to tip the scales of this battle, lunged at Wilhelm as the vampire momentarily hesitated. He tore his other arm off. He broke and severed his legs with a razor-sharp kick. He whomped the remaining torso, sending flying down to the ground. The summit of the tower they had long left behind awaited the vampire below like a giant tombstone. Red pulled Wilhelm down towards it. Robbed of his limbs, he was unable to defend himself. Yet Schreiber was already at the vampire's heels, his speed reaching mud in caves. In his mind's eye, he could see his own demise. He saw Schreiber lunging at him in slow motion, about to unleash what would likely be a mortal blow. Their silhouettes met one as a deafening explosion shook the vicinity. In that moment, two voices reverberated across the night sky as one. Wilhelm had yet to perish, for that voice was one that boasted victory. Shiro's arm had sprouted from the vampire's chest, his heart, and shoved the gun right to the jaws of the beast. This time Schreiber truly froze in shock. Even with his vast experience in bloodshed, he could never have foreseen a move like this. It went beyond the realm of any sort of comprehension. This attack, having transcended every single scenario that the indomitable Ashen Knight could envision, successfully rendered his mind blank for a brief moment. And Wilhelm knew that would happen, for the curse of Shiro's foreknowledge had infected him from within. In the moment he grew conscious of his own death, a strange noise assailed his consciousness, making him remember the precise trajectory of Schreiber would take for his finishing blow. Cancer cells proliferated. Reinhardt's legion, Shiro's foreknowledge, merely being close to them could cause one to be infected by their malady and have their bodies be filled with insatiable hunger. There was the kind of existence Wilhelm had devoured and made a part of himself. That action was the greatest manifestation of his ill-laden fate, dooming him to the cruelest of curses known to man. Yet at the same time he had been robbed of any sort of anxiety and hesitation that the unknown might precipitate. The curse of remaining calm regardless of the circumstances. The reason why Shiro could hold his ground in battles against monsters despite being an ordinary human, and it now fell into the hands of Wilhelm, proving to be his ticket to triumph.
あーっともう遅え。
A thorn sprouted from the nozzle of the gun, nailing the beast's mouth to it. Attaching itself like the hook of a fishing rod, it guided the barrel to a perfect bullseye. Its prey could do nothing but let out a series of pained wails.
往生際悪いぜ。潔くさっさとバルハラに落ちるんだな。
まあそういうことだ。悪いなシュライバー。アウフ・ピーターゼン。ああ最高だ。てめえにずっと言ってやりたかった。
Schreiber attempted to literally tear himself away from the gun, but it was all too late. The pull of the trigger would decimate the very concept of absolute speed, bring his spectacular performance to its humble conclusion.
俺の勝ちだ。
The roaring gunshot was the bell signaling the end. A demonic bullet, soaked in the power of the Arnenerbe, exited the barrel. With his head blown clean off, Schreiber's body fell limp onto the ground. Wilhelm fell down towards the ground after Schreiber's mangled remains, a lesion signing a concert of bliss in his chest. Okay.
どうだざまあ見やがるシュライバー。これでよくわかったろうがよ。ふさわしいのがどっちなのかな。
The eruption of his cackling fit sounded almost like a howl of lamentation. He couldn't care less where that foreknowledge, potent enough to bend even the craving of an immortal Annihilar, came from. He felt only fulfillment, his rose sparkling vigor like never before. He finally toppled him. All his cells, every single pore of his body, cheered in elation at having finally defeated the nemesis he had despised for too many years to count. He sang the oath of victory with a cackle, mindless to the force of gravity plummeting him towards the ground. Okay, let's skip the laughter. He could do nothing to contain his explosive outbursts of jubilation as he fell on the top of the tower. The impenetrable darkness faded with its master's demise. The muttered cackle ceased, indicating the evanescence of the vampire's life. The end of the every demon had been abrupt yet absolute. He gained victory but lost his life in the process. Having reached the pinnacle of his existence, there was nothing else awaiting him beyond that step. That was the extent of his story. If perishing after attaining the greatest state of happiness translated to truthful life, then Wilhelm Ehrenburg had indeed ended his existence as a victor. Makes sense. A corpse lay crumpled on the floor as silence hung heavy in the air. While no one could doubt that it was dead, its limbs were missing, while its torso and neck had twisted in odd angles. A certain kind of life seemed to throb within it. The corpse convulsed, as if someone had sent a jolt of electricity through it. The arm extending from its chest jerked and dug its fingers into the ground, and soon the remainder of the body that had been connected to it slowly emerged from within. Death had turned inside out. The one that once lived had perished, while the victim previously devoured reclaimed his life. With the death of the original host, the man trapped within him had gained the chance to be born anew. Like the flip of a coin, the master of the arm pressed his hand against the concrete, as if trying to devour all remaining fragments of life that still sizzled inside the corpse.
よっと。
Shiroyusa reformed himself with a laid-back sigh.
悪いな、注意。ま、利用したのはおあいこってことで、勘弁してくれ。
He addressed Wilhelm's hollow shell. This was exactly what Shiro had been aiming for from the start. He placed his bet on the subtle gap that manifested in the time of one's death, and his price? Complete revival. It had been all a matter of timing and willpower once he finally managed to stick a part of his body back in the physical world. He channeled reformation from his physical hands to the rest of his body, forcing open a rift in reality, then squeezing through it. A feat of unparalleled difficulty, a complete impossibility for an average man, yet Shiro shrugged it off as nothing particularly noteworthy. For once foreknowledge manifested in his mind, he could no longer perish. That was all he had to explain his case, and events did indeed come to pass, exactly the way he had envisioned them. Shiro looked down Wilhelm's corpse with not a glint of satisfaction in his eyes. He then directed his gaze to the edge of the stage. His augmented hearing made out a subtle shift in the wind, and his sixth sense confirmed it. Something extremely fast was coming his way. The moment he realized that fact, a ferocious gust of wind howled in his face. He made a sigh at the being's presence. He had been conscious of it for a while now, and parted his lips in a thoroughly annoyed fashion.
なんつうか、ほんと。お前らって大概どうかしてるわ。
It was the Irrationality, who was supposed to have dropped to the ground, that landed on the roof. Wolfgang Schreiber reappeared before him, seemingly unscathed.
ありえねえだろ。口ん中どうなってんだって話だよ。
The beast made no answer, either not hearing or not acknowledging the words, perhaps both. Only his lone eye twinkled silently in blue as it remained fixed on one spot, on the remnants of Wilhelm that by now had mostly turned to dust. Even as that eye of his reflected a mingling of joy and sorrow, friendship and love, at the end of the day it still lit up with a conflagration of unchained madness. Fighting each other to death was the ultimate expression of affection for the Encarrier. His fury had not expired, even after he had his head, now regenerated as if nothing had happened, utterly decimated by the unexpected direct hit. There was no way of beating this thing. He had been out of this world. Shiro could tell he stood little chance, regardless if the bastard was worn out or not. The Ashen Knight's gaze drifted to Shiro, the whirlpool of unfettered madness within it questioning his existence. Who are you? Why do you have the scent of base blood? Were you the one to get in the way of our fun? You're desecrating our valor and you do wish to die? The tremulous king in that froze devoured the giant leader fights, ascending upon Shiro with an almost agonizing chill. The critter's nose could probably discern the faint trace of blood that lingered about the young man due to the nature of the netherworld he had been reborn from. Shiro grimaced with almost palpable weariness.
たく、結局これか。
Not a single one of those bastards would ever just piece off and allow him to do his own thing. But just as he was about to unload his gun on the freak,
よい、下がれシュライバー。
a voice like a divine revelation descended upon them with an enormous pressure, extinguishing the blaze of battle like it was no more than a candle's flame. Reinhard Heydrich looked down upon them from the castle steps, floating below the demonic sky. Schreiber bowed his head the moment the order grazed his ears. It was the second time Shiro had encountered the man, but the emotions his presence instilled in him were nothing like before. That time he merely thought of him as an aberration in human form. But now, the more he looked at him, the stronger that indescribable sensation would squeeze his soul. His hair, eyes, cave and race, they had nothing in common. Yet, the feeling that had been ravaging his brain for the last few moments was without a doubt.
K の奮戦見せてもらった。実に見事なり。部下の成長を見るのもまた一興。なかなかのものであった。ならばこそ、今城へと帰還するがいい。まずは従前でないその体、存分に癒せ。眼前に迫る怒りの火に一番槍を切りたいのならば。
ヤボール
His master's voice would reach him regardless of the state he was in. The Ashen Knight vanished the moment the order reached him, his eyes sparkling. Meanwhile,
さて
the base power of golden eyes pierced Shiro for the very first time.
K とこうして話をするのは初となるな。自己紹介は必要かね。ザラトゥストラの親友よ。
The moment their gazes crossed, Shiro felt as if that repulsive, disembodied voice had breathed at his ears again. Fuck off! No way! Ridiculous! There was no way he was looking at the mirror.
いらねえよ。もう大体知ってるからな。
なるほど。ベイを通して学んだか。それは長寿。彼が心安らかに生けたのは K の助力あってこそと言ってもよい。誇りたまえ。勝者の義務は唯一それだ。この敗者なき戦いにはそれがふさわしい。
Wilhelm attained fulfillment through sacrificing his life. Schreiber triumphed, and Shiro resurrected from the dead. In retrospect, this battle came to an end with everyone gaining something. Not a single soul suffered the humiliation of defeat. But that was not what Reinhardt had meant. And Shiro knew he had never seen it, but the light dancing in his eyes.
さて、それでは一つ尋ねたいのだが、K はこれより何をなす？どうあがこうと、いずれ私の城へと途上する身だ。ベイの資格を受け継ぐ身である以上、それはすでに決定事項なのだから。
One day you would end up in here. His words were simple, and to that point, Shiro could easily conclude that the man was indeed speaking the truth. So what was he to do? What did he want to do? He came back to life for but one reason. The beast's golden gaze appeared to have seen right through him. Shiro's inexplicable urge grew even stronger, ever stronger, as he observed the devil scrutinizing his soul. What he saw in Shiro appeared to have filled the man of gold with gleeful expectation. Someone, somewhere, uttered the words, transferred as if through an electrode.
なるほどな。何よりはまずともか、麗しい友情だ。与えるにせよ、奪うにせよ、こちらには確かにそれらしか残ってはいない。他はすべてそこにある。
Redheart pointed at his own heart and made a faint smile. He wasn't talking about the organ. He meant all those he had devoured, the souls still whirling within him. What could Shiro do for their sake? Was vanquishing gold truly the solution? If there was anything else, then that could only be. The monarch of gold continued with an expectant smile. His words descended upon his kindred still staring at him with distrusting eyes, not as the whisper of a devil, but as a revelation from God in all his exalted divinity.
さあ、己が役目を果たすがいい。
A matter into which he ought to channel all his strength, for such was the fate prepared for him. If he was born for that purpose, his role would be fulfilled, and so would the words of the man who seemed his spitting image rode the wind, filling the whole world. A duty imparted upon him with his birth. In Shiro's mind, nothing else was so sweet, yet so vexatious at the same time. Shit, so many dead. Okay, 7 out of 8 already. Oh crap. Wait, 7 out of 8? Wasn't it 5 before? And I know that, like, wait, no, 2 of them did not die there. Okay, maybe I'm missing something, and it was actually 6 out of 8 already, when it comes to swastikas being unlocked. Anywho, this probably will be divided in 2 episodes, maybe even 3, we'll see. Well, you already saw, I'm just saying it right now, but you know, 1 hour and a half of recording, so yeah. It was interesting, got to admit. I expected something different when the mother went a little bit mad. Mother/sister, right? But I still liked her voice, damn it. I really like that voice. Anywho, we finished chapter 11. Tomorrow, I guess, chapter 12 begins. So for now, hope you enjoyed it. And see you in the next one. Hopefully. I hope to see you. Really. Anywho, bye bye.